Thank you so much, Lauren. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay, great. So who here wants to start a nonprofit? Show of hands. Okay, I'm seeing lots of hands, raise some kind of maybes. Well, you are absolutely in the right place if that is something you've been thinking about or considering. That's the question that we're hoping to address tonight. Is starting a nonprofit organization the best mechanism for realizing your vision of community change? And I'm so honored to be in this room of change makers and social innovators. Anyone who wants to see our community and our world a better place is someone that I hold dear to my heart. So I'm glad that you're all out here tonight. We have a lot of information to cover today in our session, and to be honest, a full hour is hardly enough time to do justice to this topic, but I'm going to try to pack it in as best we can before 8 p.m. today. I want to share with you our objectives that we're going to be covering over the next hour. So we're going to be starting with the discussion of community needs. Then we'll be exploring that question of, is starting a nonprofit organization the right step for you? Based on your goals and objectives. I'll then lay out what I call the 5 steps to starting a nonprofit organization in East Central Illinois. And spoiler alert, there are more than 5 steps, but I tried to make it simple on the handout that hopefully you picked up at the registration table on your way in. And then we'll hear from some of our recent graduates from the Community Solutions Incubator, which is an initiative of our Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. And you'll get to hear from their lived experiences of going through this process and starting up their own nonprofit organizations just this year. I did want to let you know that I'll be sharing this slide deck with all of those of you who registered for tonight's session. So if I have your email address on that sheet in the back, you'll receive both the PowerPoint deck and that handout that you hopefully picked up on the way in today. If you didn't register, no worries. Just write in your email address before you leave if you'd like to receive those materials. So Lauren did a great job of presenting me, and this is a huge picture, which looks much bigger up on the screen. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I got involved with nonprofit work to start with. So for me, it started back when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Chicago. I was a federal work studies student, and I got drawn into nonprofit work through getting involved with an organization called Kids in Danger, which is 501c3. It was founded by a couple of University of Chicago professors who lost their 18-month-old son due to a recalled portable crib in his licensed child care facility. And they found out he was the 8th child to die in that particular model of recalled portable crib. They were shocked and floored and initially just wanted to get the word out about recalled products. So they started a 501c3, and later they began doing a lot of advocacy work that got out the word not just about recalled products, but actually changing the system through public policy to ensure that that product could never be found in a licensed child care facility in Illinois. Seeing that couple mobilizing their grief into something really positive that created change was totally inspiring to me. And I decided that's what I want to do for work. That's what I want to do with my life, is to work for purpose-driven organizations that are making lasting change. And if that resonates at all with you today, you're in the right spot. And I hope that this information that I'll be presenting to you today will be useful and will help you shape your journeys. The past 10 years, my family and I have been here in Champaign, Illinois. We came here because my husband started a PhD program at the university. I've had lots of experience over the last few years to get my feet wet in nonprofit management and leadership. I was the executive director of the Champaign Center Partnership, which does business development in our downtown, midtown, and campus town. I've done some teaching in the School of Social Work on this topic: nonprofit sector and society, social entrepreneurship and social change, management of human service organizations. And my current role is Center for Nonprofit Excellence Director at our Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. Who here has heard of the Community Foundation? Okay, I see some hands. That's great. Okay. And also our president and CEO of the Community Foundation is sitting in the back, Allison Winter. Thank you for coming tonight and supporting. We very much appreciate your leadership of this organization. The Community Foundation itself is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to promote philanthropy in the East Central Illinois region. So we cover 8 counties. We're a hub of philanthropy. And in addition to the monetary support that the Community Foundation gives, so we give out grants as well as scholarships to local nonprofit organizations totaling about $1.5 million a year. We also want to ensure that our nonprofits get best practices and good education and resources. And that's what I get to do through our through our Center for Nonprofit Excellence, of which Community Solutions Incubator is a piece. So this center was founded in 2008, and essentially our work is helping change makers who are serving in executive leadership roles at nonprofits and their board members to be as effective as possible. We do this through a number of mechanisms. I facilitate monthly executive director leadership network meetings. If you happen to be an executive director and didn't know that these exist, we would love for you to come and attend these facilitated discussions. We also offer board trainings, which happen on a quarterly basis, called board boot camps. Then we also started a new series of fundraising trainings because we heard from nonprofits locally that was something they wanted more information about. How do you run a capital campaign? How do you run an annual campaign? How do you open an endowment? What even is an endowment? So those are some of the things that we try to convey and strengthen our nonprofits' knowledge base through these trainings. And then an initiative near and dear to my heart is our Community Solutions Incubator, which is for new and emerging founders of nonprofit organizations who need some additional education as well as mentoring to help when they're starting up their organization. So you'll get to hear from a couple of them in just a few minutes. But at this point, I wanted to turn the floor a little bit over to you all. So you are going to have some interaction tonight. Hopefully that's okay for some of you, for all of you here. I wanted to get you thinking about some key questions that I think are so important to consider when you're thinking about, should I start a nonprofit? So I'll give you instructions on how this is going to go in a minute, but the first question is, what is the social challenge or community need that you are trying to address? Secondly, why do you think forming a nonprofit is the best way to address this challenge? Okay, so those are your 2 questions. I am wanting to do this as a pair and share. So by that, I mean you're going to turn to someone near you. It can be a cluster of 3 of you. Maybe only one of you will get to share. That's okay. We're trying to build some community here tonight. So in the next minute or 2, go ahead and answer this question with maybe the nearest person to you, and then be listening for me, because I'll try to get your attention back here in a minute or 2. Okay. Okay, we're going to come back together now. Let's come back together. I love to hear all of this active sharing. Thank you so much for pairing and sharing with me. I would love to report back if someone had just an inspiring community need that is being addressed. Would you raise your hand that you heard from someone? Yes, go ahead.
I'm just going to go with mine because I have a lot of people that get really enthused whenever I talk about this. So I'm a trained death doula, and I would like to bring a nonprofit for death and grief care in the area, including things like helping people get wills together, get their end-of-life stuff together. There's a lot to it.
That's
when
great.
you talk to people about it, a lot of people are really interested.
So just to repeat for the recording, so a nonprofit focused on death and doula care?
Death and grief.
Grief care. Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, I know there were more great ideas out there. Who's willing to share one just to... Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I work at the Able Center in town with Dr. Jennifer Huffman. So she is wanting to start a nonprofit branch to that. She basically does neuropsych testing for youth and adults and families with neurodivergence. So there's, I don't know, I won't go into a whole tirade, but there are months and months long waiting lists. If you have insurance, and if you don't have insurance, services are even harder to secure. So her heart is to start a nonprofit so that we can get evaluations and resources and things like support in helping families go to the school and figure out IEP plans, especially for families who cannot afford care and need low-cost evaluations and low-cost support.
Excellent, great. So care for neurodivergent, and is it a school for neurodivergent kids?
It's
A
a clinic.
clinic, okay.
Yeah, we're not a physical setting per se, but
Okay.
serving all the neurodivergent individuals in CU.
Super. Great. And I am sure there's so many other needs expressed here, and I will look forward to hearing more about them, but thank you for participating in that with me. Okay, I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of our talk right now. Again, this is a lot of information that I'm going to be sharing, so just sit tight. A lot of it's documented on that handout, so if you're a note taker, know that most of it is actually listed there for your future reference. I did just want to share that this information that I am presenting is compiled from a variety of resources. I will share some of those sources with you later on today. I did want to let you know it's not a fully exhaustive list, should not be taken as legal or financial advice, informational purposes only. We would encourage you to consult with an attorney before incorporating, and certainly the Community Foundation can be a resource for you for your nonprofit creation questions. So your first step that I would encourage you to take, and really I would love for you to sit as long as possible on this step before making any further moves, is to ask a lot of very important and difficult questions. It takes some intentional time with this. So I've listed a number of questions to consider up on this slide. Along with these questions, I would ask for you to consider if creating a nonprofit is the best choice for your goals. There are so many alternatives to creating a nonprofit organization, such as a for-profit or a B corporation, a social enterprise. You could enter into fiscal sponsorship with another entity that has tax-exempt status. You could find out what other existing nonprofits are doing and see if there's an opportunity to partner with them. So I want you to just think about all of those various alternatives when considering if a 501c3 is the right move for you. And then I tell this all the time to students in my class on social entrepreneurship, get to know other stakeholders already working on the issue that you'd like to address in the community before going it on your own. What are their programs and services? How is what you're proposing creating unique value, and how will you distinguish yourselves from others working in that space? is there any opportunity for you to partner or buddy up with other organizations that are working in whatever community need that you're looking to address? And I share this because there are many nonprofit corporations in existence in our community. In fact, at last count, there were 879 501c3s, and that's in Champaign County only. When we look at our full service area of East Central Illinois, there are over 2,000 501c3s. So there's a high likelihood that there are other organizations that have started, might be doing some work, some that are going gung-ho, already working in different issues that you care about. Just a disclaimer to do your market research. And in fact, Lauren, who introduced me as the business specialist here, if you are looking to do in-depth market research, the library has some fantastic resources for this that I'd encourage you to check into as you're going through this particular step. So next thing I want to talk about, I'm going to kind of put on my teaching hat here, is I've been asked the question, why are there nonprofits? Like, what is a nonprofit? How is it different from a for-profit? How did this sector even come into being? So the answer to this question is a little convoluted. I spent an entire class period on this at the U of I. The short answer is consider how nonprofits are situated among the different sectors that exist in our economy. So first sector is the market, for-profit organizations, largest sector in our society, and employs the greatest number of people in our US workforce. Then we've got the public or government sector, which is second largest. And then we've got our nonprofit sector, which is also called the voluntary or sometimes called the third sector. Now you know why it's called the third. Nonprofit sector is third largest workforce in the United States, behind for-profit and government sectors. It employs about 10% of the American workforce, 11.4 million jobs. So why nonprofits exist kind of goes back to an economic theory called the three failures theory that focuses on the efficiency of nonprofit organizations. So the idea is that when the market fails, if government fails, what is left to kind of fill in the gap, that's where nonprofits come in. That's where nonprofits specifically are situated to fill that niche that government and the market are not accomplishing. And so there are a lot of advantages to nonprofit organizations in being nimble and able to respond to community needs in a very unique way. What makes an organization nonprofit? Well, that name is kind of a misnomer in that nonprofit corporations can actually earn a profit. We would actually encourage you to earn a profit. What's different for a nonprofit or charitable organization is that that profit can't be used to inure any shareholders or owners of the organization, unlike for-profit organizations. So those profits can't be paid out to individuals at the end of the year. It has to be reinvested in the corporation. And it has to be used to serve the community. So what the Internal Revenue Service defines as public benefit. Public benefit, that can take a variety of forms. Organized religious practice, programs aimed at alleviating poverty, providing education. There's a host of other things that make our communities better places to live. But the key to those actions, according to the IRS, they must not be organized or operated for the benefit of private interests. No part of the net earnings of a C3 may inure to the benefit of any private shareholder or individual. So that's important for you all to know. Not only must the charitable organization create public benefit, but it also has to be supported by the community. Public charities actually have to pass the IRS's public support test, which stipulates that 1/3 of the operating support comes from the community. So if you're in here today thinking, oh, I don't want to do any fundraising, I'm letting you know, as a nonprofit leader or future board member, likely you will be engaged in fundraising activities to meet that public support test that the IRS requires. Okay, let's go into some advantages and disadvantages of nonprofit status. I'm going to start with the advantages because I am always a positive person. So the first one has to do with tax exemption. This is kind of a no-brainer here. Organizations that qualify as public charities under the Internal Revenue Code 501c3 are eligible for federal exemption from payment of corporate income tax. And once exempt, then your nonprofit is likely going to be exempt from similar state and local taxes. If the 5O organization has the C3 tax status as well, any contributions from individuals or companies' charitable contributions are tax deductible. So that's usually the main reason why people are wanting to form a nonprofit. Also, and I hear this a lot, well, I have to have that C3 status in order to be eligible for grants. That is usually true. So most foundations, such as the Community Foundation, do require you to have C3 status in order for you to be eligible to apply for grants, for example, from our foundation. Another advantage is the formal structure. So why would you form this corporation versus just kind of doing it on your own as a volunteer activity? Well, a nonprofit exists as a legal entity in its own right, separately from its founders. So that incorporation is protective in a lot of ways. It puts the nonprofit's mission and its structure above the personal interests of individuals associated with it. And that also limits liability. So if something goes wrong, the good thing about having a nonprofit structure is creditors and courts are limited to the assets of the organization. The founders, directors, members, and employees are not personally liable for the nonprofit's debts. There are some exceptions to that, but that would be another advantage of incorporating as a nonprofit. Just a few disadvantages or other considerations you might want to have in mind. There is a cost associated to forming a nonprofit, both a time cost as well as effort and money. There are fees to apply for incorporation and tax exemption. You might be needing to use an attorney, an accountant, or other consultant, so I would factor in all of those costs as you're considering this step. There's also a lot of paperwork involved in running a nonprofit. As an exempt corporation, you have to keep detailed records and submit annual filings to the IRS and also to the state by stated deadlines to keep active and keep that exempt status. And then there's shared control. So if you are wanting to be the owner of your corporation, a nonprofit is not the right structure for you because as a founder, you are not the owner. So who owns a nonprofit? Does anyone want to take a guess? I hear the community, yes. It's the community owned, it's governed by a board of directors. It's kind of like everyone owns it, but also no one owns it, if you want to think of it that way. So as a founder, you will likely be very involved in the organization. Maybe you'll be a board member, likely you'll be on that first board of directors. Perhaps at some point you would be able to be on payroll as a paid executive director, for example, but you would not be in an ownership role. And in any corporation, I would always encourage, you're starting it, but how do you want it to end? Or with a nonprofit, how will you eventually pass it off? Because that is what is going to happen with a nonprofit organization. And all of this is regulated by its articles of incorporation and bylaws. And the last thing just to consider is there is scrutiny by the public as a public organization, as a nonprofit, because of the public interest. So finances of your organization are open to public inspection. Public can obtain state and federal filings so they can learn about salaries, who's on your board of directors. There's just a lot of information that you will have to be transparent about as a nonprofit. So that's a lot to consider, and I don't want to dissuade you, but I want you to know both sides as you're going into this venture. So assuming that you're wanting to move forward, I'm going to continue going through our little handout here. The next step would be thinking about your purpose and your mission. So part of this research and planning process is defining that purpose and mission. And assuming that you're eventually wanting to apply for a tax-exempt incorporation under Section 501c3, and I wanted to let you know there are 29 sections of the 501c status with the IRS. Not all are C3s, but C3 is the most advantageous status if you want to have the tax exemption and accept donations that are tax exempt. So you'll want to make sure that your mission, as you craft that statement, is aligned with these exempt purposes, which come from the 501c3 Internal Revenue Code. So you'll be able to solicit the tax-free donations. You can see charitable, religious, educational, scientific, literary, on and on. There are many that fall within these different categories. And then some other planning steps. You'll recruit a board of directors. So the state of Illinois requires you to have at least 3 people on that initial board of directors. We would encourage your board to be an odd number, and ideally 5 to 7 would be a good range to start with. We like to say a range because you might not always have that exact number, and if you want to be in compliance with your own bylaws, it's helpful to have a range. So if you're on the lower end, then you're meeting it, but you can go up to a certain maximum. So these individuals will be fiduciaries, so legally responsible for the organization's governance, finances, its legal compliance. They need to be people who are willing to attend your meetings and to fundraise on your nonprofit's behalf. We would also encourage you to develop a business plan. Again, I'm looking back at Lauren because she has some wonderful resources here through the Gale Business Planner, other business planning resources. So if you haven't yet done that step, we would encourage you to develop that business plan. Think about how are you going to run this thing? What does the first year look like? Describing your proposed programs in detail, thinking about expenses and revenue, answering questions like who will you serve? Where will you serve them? What revenue sources will you secure? Grants, donations, fees for service, individual donations. When's your fiscal year going to start? When's it going to end? What accounting method are you going to use? There are many, many details to consider. And then you'll want to do a name search and reserve your organization's name. So this is at the state level. You'll search the Illinois Secretary of State Department of Business Services to check on the availability of your nonprofit's name before you reserve the corporate name with the corporate division. You want to make sure it's not taken by another organization. And a pro tip on this would be to think about your eventual URL as well as social media channels. If you want all of that to align for branding purposes, that would be a good way to check to see if it's already been taken by someone else. Okay, can you believe that was all step 1? Remember when I told you there were a lot of little micro steps? I'm going to breeze through some of these future steps because I want to get to our incubator graduates. But step 2 is pretty important. Okay, so you'll need to then appoint a registered agent. This is the person who's responsible for receiving all legal notices on behalf of your organization. They must be physically located in the state of Illinois. Likely it will be you, but it could be another one of your board members. Then you need to file your articles of incorporation. This is a formal set of documents that are filed with the Illinois Secretary of State, which basically legally documents the creation of your corporation. You can file this online. You just need a credit card. It's $50 for the filing fee, $75 if you need it expedited. You'll then file and obtain your federal employer identification number. This is done with the IRS. It's a 9-digit number. I think of it like your social security number, but for your organization, which helps them identify it. You can visit the IRS website to do that step. Then draft bylaws. If you need templates for bylaws, the library also has those through the Plan Builder. We also have some samples with the Community Foundation. I would say never do this in a blank document. Get a sample, get a template. These have been written before, and then you can customize them so they're specific to your organization. These are basically governing documents that supplement the rules that are already laid out by the state corporation code, telling the state how this corporation is going to be run. Your bylaws you can amend at any time with your board of directors, so they're not set in stone forever, but it is important to get good bylaws set up from the start. This is going to guide any actions, any decision-making with the board of directors, helping prevent, resolve conflict. It will be helpful for you to look at samples before moving forward with that step. We would encourage a conflict of interest policy as well to make sure that that you're avoiding any conflicts with any board members or employees on behalf of the corporation. And then you'll hold your first board meeting. And at that board meeting, you will elect officers. So hopefully you'll already have determined who is going to be holding the role of president or chair, secretary, and treasurer. This first meeting is actually required by law and has to be officially documented through your meeting minutes. Other business that's usually done at this first meeting is approving a mission statement and that conflict of interest policy. So up until now, most of this has been done at the state level, with the exception of that federal EIN number. At this point in time, you can kind of take a pause. Everyone just take a breath right now. Big breath, breathe in, breathe out. Okay, you've got 15 months to actually do this next step. So once you've gotten all the stuff done with the state, you don't have to apply for your C3 right away. You can take some time. Some of you might be in a hurry to do it if you're wanting to get the tax-deductible contributions to be allowed to receive. So just do this within 15 months of filing your articles of incorporation. This is a form that you find in the IRS website. It's the 1023 or the 1023 EZ. There are different fees depending on which form that you want to fill out. You will also file for, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Fees for this, in case if you're curious, $275 for the 1023 EZ, $600 for the 1023. Then you're going to finish all of your state filings. So you're filing a registration statement for charitable organizations. This is required before you can actually solicit donations for your organization. It's not a hard form. You'll find it on the Illinois Attorney General's office website. And then you'll file for state sales tax exemption. We'd encourage you to assess all your insurance needs. That would be general, hazard, property, directors and officers liability insurance. At minimum, please have directors and officers liability insurance. Before you start operating, it protects your board of directors and officers for any claims that could be made against them while serving. And then finally, if you've made it this far, you've started your nonprofit. Yes, thank you for starting it. And now it's all of the annual and ongoing maintenance and compliance. So these are just things to keep in mind that have to be done on a yearly basis. Once a year, you'll be filing your annual report of officers and directors with the Illinois Secretary of State. This form, that registered agent that you filled out before, someone who's in Illinois, they're going to get your form. They'll receive it paper copy by mail, and it has to be filled out and turned in within 60 days before the due date. If you don't fill out that form, it could result in involuntary dissolution of your corporation. So make sure you fill it out. And then step 2 is the IRS Form 990. This is also called an annual information return. Every nonprofit has to fill this out each year. Depending on how big your gross receipts are, you might fill out the more complicated 990. The medium one, which is the 990 EZ, or the 990N, is literally this tiny little postcard that if you make less than $50,000 or bring in less than $50,000 in receipts, that's the one that you'll be filling out. The IRS might require other filings, and so we'd encourage you to check with them depending on your status, and then be following charitable solicitation, disclosure, and financial statements. So I know that was a big information dump, and thank you for sticking with me for that, but that is literally all these steps to take to start a nonprofit. Again, I'd say though, the steps are not that hard to complete. I think the bigger question is, should you do it? Is it the right thing to do to meet your goals? And that's where you'll need to talk with others, to check with other resources, to really sit and determine, is this the right structure? What am I trying to achieve? Will this be the best mechanism? Small Business Development Center has some great resources as well. I would encourage you to talk with them there. And then here are some resources where I pulled today's material. These are all hyperlinked in the PowerPoint that I'll be sending out. I would share this, how to form a nonprofit corporation. I know the library has. This is valid for every state in the United States and has some great information. If you want to buy it, it's only $35. Okay. I am now going to invite our special guests to come up here. And while they're making their way up here, I do want to just pause if there are any questions about that information overload that I just gave you. And any question is a valid one.
Are we doing this one? Or?
Oh, you know what? You're going to each hold this. Oh, is this right, Lauren?
Yeah, I just need to hold it while they speak.
Okay, so I'll have you pass it. Okay, we will have a time to ask questions of all three of us. So if there's anything that I've shared where you're like, huh, what? or for them, you will have a chance to do that here in a moment. I would love to introduce you to two graduates of our Community Solutions Incubator. They both participated in this most recent incubator cohort, which we held earlier this year, which is a 10-week program. And we have Emily McCown, who is the co-founder of CU Sings People's Chorus, and Anita Boone, who is a co-founder of the Jamie Boone Project, here with her spouse, Johnny Boone, today. Thank you both for being here. I've given them a couple questions, and so I'm going to ask the questions first, and then I will open it up to you all to ask whatever question you would like with our time together. So I'd like to start with, let's start with Emily. This question is for both of you, then we'll pass it over. If you can just please introduce yourself and tell us what motivated you to start a nonprofit.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
You can hold it down here, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm Emily McCown. I'm a co-founder of CU Sings, and we started about a year ago, considering if it was time for us to start a nonprofit. We started as a community choir, just kind of meeting at Parkland, and we were kind of attached to a class there, but it was just a bunch of interested singers, and we essentially got too big for the rehearsal space there, and we were in big discernment with Parkland College about whether it was we needed to stay or go, and we mutually decided that we needed more space and needed to go on our own, and they were in fact losing money because we weren't enrolled in class there. So we took the incubator class, and we doubled in size this year, so it's pretty exciting. I would say we took like good students of the incubator. We took Genevieve's advice to interview all the stakeholders and really stay in that discernment time for a while. And what we found when we asked the community and like choral music enthusiasts and just Parkland and people in our choir was the thing that was missing in kind of the choral music world was an inclusive space that was non-auditioned, that said, open the door, you can come in, whether you know how to sing or not, we're gonna welcome you. And then also high achieving, just really trying to bring high quality music to the community. So that was the kind of inspiration for our group. And me personally, I just really believe in the transformative power of music, you know, in the kind of divisive world we live in. I think it's really crucial that we share embodied space together. And, you know, there's a lot of good neuroscience out there about music as a healing therapy. So maybe I'll just share quickly the CU Sings little mission that we're still wordsmithing, but CU Sings brings a diversity of people together through the transformative power of music, creating an inclusive, accessible, and high-quality musical experience that fosters belonging and connection for adults in CU. So that's the trend. Keep it brief. And I'll hand it over to Anita.
My name is Anita Boone, and I'm a co-founder, along with my husband Johnny, of the Jamie Boone Project. Our organization is dedicated to promoting positive mental health awareness, suicide prevention, and providing resources to those facing stress, anxiety, and a crisis situation. This mission is deeply personal to us as we lost our son, our 21-year-old son Jamie to suicide on May 30th of 2023. So through this journey, we realized the critical need for education, support, and hope in our communities. Our goal is ultimately, right now, we're kind of starting small with reaching rural communities in the central and eastern Illinois, and usually high schoolers, middle school and high schoolers.
Eighth graders.
8th graders and seniors. We're giving these what's called Jamie bags out, which represents just a mental inventory every day. And it has like coping tools in there, resources for suicide, American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. We are partnering with them. So starting this non-for-profit is a way for us to honor Jamie's memory and turn our grief into action to help others, and also to talk about mental health and just breaking the stigma of it. And we officially became a non-for-profit on May 14th of this year, on the day that Jamie actually graduated from the U of I. So that was kind of a nice memorial. And we also went through the incubator program with Genevieve. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Anita and Emily. We'll stay with Anita for our next question, which is, what have you learned through going through this process of incorporation? Have there been any surprises or roadblocks that you've encountered? Could you share with us briefly?
Sure. One of the most valuable lessons that we've learned, because we did this together, is the importance of patience and attention to detail. I'm also an accountant by trade. So incorporation involves a lot of paperwork, legal requirements, like Genevieve said, and ensuring your mission and purpose are clearly defined. So that's one thing. I also learned the value of seeking guidance, whether it's mentors, which we had mentors with the incubator program, local organizations, being involved with the community foundation. Also, there's online resources, and it's essential to set up your foundation correctly from the start. And I literally, the little steps that Genevieve did, like I would literally go through them step by step. And it's because it really does create a strong base for future growth and credibility. Was there another part to it?
That's good for now. Yeah, thank you.
Remind me of the question. Can you say it again?
It was, what have you learned through the process of incorporation? Any surprises or roadblocks?
Sure. Yeah, I was focused on the roadblocks part, but it's been pretty thrilling. We started when we left Parkland, we were at about 40 singers, and we started building our board, and over a few months period, we doubled in size this year. So we're 80 singers strong now, and it's sounding really good. And I would just say, I'd say the biggest challenge is like the urgency you feel when you're passionate about your mission. You want to get it done. You want to do the programming. You've got something you want to bring to the community, and it's hard to slow down and breathe and work through the checklist step by step and interview those stakeholders. And we really, I would say, doing the paperwork is one thing that to make sure you get done in order. But really you need good collaboration to run a nonprofit, and clearly defining who's doing what has been a pretty big challenge, because we're kind of building the plane while we fly it, which a lot of nonprofits do. And so I think really when you're building your team and building your board, really thinking through how the labor is going to be shared before you start doing the labor, I would say that's been a challenge, and be some advice,
Great, thank you. And then last question that I will ask, then I'll turn it over to you all, and we'll start with Emily again. What advice would you give to folks here who are interested in starting a nonprofit?
I would say know yourself. This is maybe a continuation of the last bit of advice, which was, clearly think through what your role is, if you're a founder, what your board president and secretary and treasurer and staff, how all of those things interact. And if you're a founder of this organization, really be clear with yourself about what it is you want to do and who you want to attract that you don't want to do. And that has been really critical to feeling like we're bringing a kind of a diverse amount of skills together to the table and figuring out where the balance is to, and I feel like it's been a hard process to discern and have good boundaries, but the clearer I am about what I can and can't do, the kind of stronger the collaborations get. So I would say, yeah, keep your eyes on the prize, because it's not easy, and I think there's something to this knowing yourself and knowing how to collaborate thing. Is in Champaign County, everybody's always trying to get you to come to their event. There's like so many nonprofits, 900 here. I think there's actually something beautiful about robust democracy when we're all kind of passionate about our own projects and just taking time to share and make these touch points. So, yeah, just keep talking to each other. I think it's exciting, the amount of energy we have in this community.
I'll just kind of add a little bit to what Emily said. Also, with starting a non-for-profit, it really does involve like she said, like your passion, like your personal stakes. So you'll have to you're vulnerable at times also, which can be overwhelming at times, which is kind of like maybe a roadblock too. Because for us, what we're doing and what we're talking about, and what a lot of us are wanting to do, what you want to aspire to do, it's really putting your whole heart in it. And so you're vulnerable at times, and what we share is very, a lot of times, hard for people to hear. So we're kind of putting ourselves out on the line a lot of times. But my advice to start is with a clear purpose and a passion as to why you want to do this. Because your mission will drive everything from gathering support to sustaining you during the hard times. So you can't be afraid to ask for help, reach around to other non-for-profit leaders, take advantage of the resources here at the library, take the classes, like the incubator one, highly, highly recommend, and just build a community around you. And just be prepared for the long haul, because progress might be slow, but even the small victories can have a big impact. Lastly, just stay authentic and true to your mission, and I really do believe the right opportunities will follow.
Great, thank you both so much. I will let you know that they both brought some materials if you're interested in learning about the Jamie Boone Project. They have brochures on the back table, and it looked like CU Sings People's Chorus. You have a concert coming up?
Yeah, there's posters and flyers in the back if you're a nerd for Christmas music like I am. It's a week from Sunday, December 15th, 3 o'clock on campus at McKinley. Really good, high-quality music, so
Great.
Come sing with us.
Thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes before 8, and so this is your time to ask questions, and I will stick around for a little bit afterwards if you want to do any one-on-one, but I see a hand getting ready to go up. Yes, and I will repeat your question here.
How do you initially hire your first volunteer employees if you don't have funds or grants?
So the question is, how do you hire your first, you said volunteer employees, but you mean paid?
Sure.
People that are getting paid. Okay, so how do you get people on payroll when you don't yet have money coming in? Well, that's a good question. How would you all answer that?
I would say you need funding available. If that's from raising money to applying for grants, and you're going to actually would build your budget. That's right, like the business purpose and the budget. So first you'd want to have a kind of a clear view of what you want. What you want to build for financial. How do you want to gain your financial support? And then you'd apply for like a grant, and you'd budget for, say an executive director, a paid one, or whoever you want to hire. So you'd have to budget that ahead of time and have the resources in order to make payroll, I would say.
Seed funding is very tricky for a lot of startup nonprofit organizations. To be honest, a lot of founders are funding themselves the first year of their nonprofit. Yep, okay, I'm seeing some nods that that's actually true. Others will engage their board, and maybe their board of volunteers will help kick in some money. Those grants are hard to find in the first year or two of seed funding. After you have established a track record, you'll be more likely to be able to be competitive for grant applications. I would say most nonprofits, the strongest donor base is individual donors. So making that case and having a fundraising campaign will be probably the best way to start as a startup. Great question. What other questions? Yes.
Hi, this question is for either one, either one of you, but did you consult a lawyer or legal advice in forming your organization?
And I'm just going to repeat it for the recording. Did you consult a lawyer or legal advice as you incorporated?
Yeah, we consulted a couple, and neither of them were practicing in Illinois, but they had advice about that IRS 1023 form, and that was really the most critical part that has a few kind of complicated questions that needed help with that. But yeah, and we were lucky to find ones that would donate their time. So,
Thank you.
We have a friend that is an attorney, and she helped with the articles of incorporation, and then she also reviewed our bylaws, and then I filed the 1023 easy form, but she's like, if you have questions, just contact me. So I definitely do recommend consulting an attorney.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Good question. Other questions? I'm just going to go as I see new people raising their hands first. Yes?
What would happen to the assets if the organization was to be dissolved?
That is a great question. So the question is, what would happen to the assets if the organization would be dissolved? Doesn't go to the founder, doesn't go to the board. It actually has to be donated to another nonprofit organization that has C3 status. Yep. There are other ways that mechanism can happen. We've actually had that with an organization that did dissolve in Champaign, where those assets are in the process, I think, of still being moved over to our community foundation. Okay, see another question here.
Emily, a question for you. When you did your initial Parkland concerts, were there any that was for free in the beginning, or did you always have it paid?
The Parkland concerts were free in the beginning, and then once we started incorporating, and this year, in the fall of 24, we started doing a suggested donation, trying to find ways to kind of do earned revenue wherever we can make money. We're trying to. So, but we also don't want to turn anybody away. So that's how it works. Yeah.
I'd love to take one more question, and then we'll wrap up, and I'll give you some contact information for future follow-up. Yes, right here in the front.
What type of future growth do you see from either one of your organizations? I think sometimes you start a nonprofit and you're like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, but you need to, of course, take it slow. What type of growth do you anticipate?
And just repeating, so the question is, what type of future growth do you see for your organization? It's a very strategic question. Thank you.
Yeah, I want you to.
Well, maybe while he's coming up here, I'll just say it has been a very organic process for Frank Gallo is the director of the choir, People's Chorus, and so we're really co-founders. So the vision is still being seen, it's becoming clear. But I think that I'm really into community building and community organizing and building bridges across difference, and he brings the musical professionalism. And so I think together it's a really robust kind of pair. And we talk about having programs in the schools. I like one-day choirs. Maybe you've seen that on social media. Just touch points for the community to just hopefully as easily and accessible as possible to find community, to have a minute to sing together and feel connected and belong. Yeah. So.
Our son, we don't want to see anybody else go down the same path as our child did. And as far as growth, we want these stress bags, we call them Jamie bags, just a mental inventory every day. And we want them in every school. We want every graduating senior to get one. We cannot guarantee anything in this world, but we can guarantee that these kids will have stress sometime in their life. And if in our stress bags that we give them, it has tools in it for them. And our goal, our growth is that we want every school to be able to give these to these kids. We want them to be in firemen's, fire trucks. We want them to be in police vehicles, state police vehicles, and emergency vehicles. We want them in classrooms. I want a teacher to have it in their desk drawer, so that when they see a child that is stressed, that the child just found out their mother died or what have you, that they can say, here. It won't cure it, but it will help you get through a moment.
Thank you for great questions. I would also say strategic planning, it would be a great process that probably these folks will be getting into in the next year or two with their boards of directors. We actually did a session on strategic planning here at the library that you can find on the library's YouTube channel if you're wanting to listen in on that session. I'd like to just take a moment to just thank Anita, Johnny, and Emily for being here with us tonight. These are the heroes. These are the passion and then actually turning it into an organization that's making change. Would you join me in thanking them tonight? You are the folks, and you as well, that make this job and this work so enjoyable. I want you to know that the Community Foundation is a resource for you for these nonprofit-related questions, for resources for your boards, resources on fundraising. Our contact information is here, as well as our website, and we would love to stay in touch. So thank you all for coming out tonight. I will stick around for a little while if anyone has more questions. Thank you, and have a good evening.